just what I'm made of now. Trying to reach inside the picture, trying to get my ambition. Let me show you just what I'm made of.
Well. It's that time already, huh? It's finally that time. The time that we have been waiting for probably a good while now. And for pretty good reason. Because this is the big one. This is the biggest year-end list I'm making for both this and Cynical Sane. Even though Cynical Sane is going to have more year-end lists, because, it also deals with music and a bunch of other stuff. But, still, we have a lot to talk about today. Apologies I'm not on camera. Please give me a second. I'm grabbing something. I promise you I won't be too long. There we go. Yeah, sorry, I know. I came unprepared. I know, it's weird. Hold on for 1 sec. Sorry, excuse me. There we go. Okay. Now I can get on camera. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Animation Station, everyone's destination for anything and everything animation. And if you're watching this on Cynical Sane 7, hi, I'm just some random guy that loves to bitch about movies. So, it is finally time. We've gone through the worst, the most disappointing, and the most surprising. Now it's time for the big one. The big finale for 2022 in movies. And that is the top 20 best movies of 2022. Yes, I'm doing a top 20 list because there were so many excellent, awesome, spectacular films that came out this year that I couldn't limit the list to just 10. I couldn't. And if you want to know how this year is a huge improvement over last year, for the worst list, I gave out 6 zeros. But this year, I only gave out 2 zeros, 4 11s, and 3 10s. Yeah, that doesn't say how great of a year this has been. I don't know what will. So, no honorable mentions for this one because this video is already going to be an hour long as is. So let's just dive right in, shall we? This is my top 20 best movies of 2022. Kicking us off at number 20 is one I'm going to keep nice and brief because I mostly explained this one in the most surprising list yesterday, and that is Scream 5. This is a movie that I should not have expected to be good, and yet it came out amazing, like a fantastic movie. Not only did it finally break that stupid January horror movie curse, but it also broke the 5th installment curse as well. Like, it did so well in this movie. Like, the legacy characters are great. Even the new characters are great in here. Like, this is a legitimately great horror film, and a great 5th installment to a franchise that, let's be honest, guys, we didn't know where to go after Scream 4 because of the tragic passing of Wes Craven. But this is a movie that he himself would be proud of, because you have really good acting from both the legacy and the new characters. You have great directing. You have surprisingly great jokes and dialogue, sharp writing, and yes, the mystery is very predictable, but it's still very fun to go through. The kills are gruesome, it throws twists at you left and right, and while some are predictable, which is what holds it back and keeps it from being higher on the list, it's still a damn good horror film. Seriously, if you are into horror, or if you love Scream, you're gonna love this movie. And the little commentary it throws in there at the end is clever. It is incredibly clever and extremely genius. And not to mention, the most meta thing that a franchise like this can do. I'm hyped for Scream 6, and I'm really hoping it keeps the momentum. So yep, number 20, Scream 5. Number 19, I know I crapped on Disney a lot this year, and they mostly deserved it, but there is one thing they did this year that actually was really good. Like, really, really good. Okay, actually, too. While Multiverse of Madness unfortunately missed the list, you know what didn't? Werewolf by Night. This is a film. Yes, I'm calling it a film. People are calling it a film. They're putting it as an honorable mention on best lists. And if they're calling it a movie, I can call it a movie. Yes, I know it's not over an hour long. It's not technically feature length. But people are calling it a movie anyway, so screw it. I'm calling it a movie anyway. Deal with it. Werewolf by Night is Marvel's ode and tribute to those classic, iconic 30s and 40s horror films that I adore so much. You know, the Universal monster films, Frankenstein, Dracula, and in this case, the Wolfman. And it adapts a comic series that not many people really know about, but it is a damn good comic. Like, trust me, Werewolf by Night, the comic books, are very good comics. Like, very good, some of the best in Marvel. And here they really, really brought it to life in a big way. It's in black and white. It has cheesy dialogue that is kind of hit and miss, which is what holds it back. But it also has surprisingly great gruesome murder. Like, when you finally see the werewolf at the end of the movie, oh, it doesn't disappoint. It is gruesome, it is gory, it is brutal, but because it's in black and white, they're able to show everything without censorship, which is sick. And the werewolf himself is great, the mystery surrounding it's great, and just this whole mystery society that is going on here, like this society of hunters that are pretty much battling against one another in this like competition sort of thing for this rare red crystal, is so cool and so well done. Not to mention the directing is on point, and putting this in black and white was perfect for this kind of film. But like I said, the hokey dialogue does definitely hold it back a little, and it does have some MCU-isms that can leave you feeling a bit annoyed at times, but trust me when I say this is a great movie. And if there's any great reason to watch this movie alone, it's for Swamp Thing. He is an awesome character, and they really did him justice in this movie. So yeah, Werewolf by Night, one of Disney's only non-screw-ups of this year, and a really damn good one. If you are a 30 and 40s horror fan like me, you are required to watch this. Damn, just so damn good. Number 18, speaking of good horror films, how about we talk about Prey, the movie that no one thought was going to be any good. It was a back-to-basics Predator film that was going to go extremely primal, back to the Cherokee Native American era. And you also have this primal Predator who, while he's still super advanced compared to this Cherokee Indian tribe, he still has to do a lot of things very primal, and he is very far inferior to the technologically advanced predators we've seen in movies like Predator 1, Predator 2, Predators, and The Predator. And also, speaking of The Predator, this is a million times better than it in every single way, shape, and form. And not to mention the dialogue here is great. Whether you're watching this in English or you're watching the Cherokee American Indian version, which I gotta say is really cool that it's the first movie to ever do that, to have a full movie in the Cherokee Indian language. Being part Cherokee myself, it definitely hits me right in the heart. And the kills are great, the characters are great, the acting is... It is just a great movie that revitalized this franchise. And if we get more films like this, like Samurai Predator, oh, that'd be so freaking sick. But yeah, this movie is awesome. It is so good, and I'm so glad that the Predator franchise came back with a huge bang. Also, honorable mention to Hellraiser. It didn't make the list, but it is another really good return to form for a franchise that sorely, desperately needed it. So yeah. Number 17 is going to one of the most overrated films of the year, but a movie that I can see why is on best list, because it's on mine, just not as high as everyone else, and I'm going to explain why. Number 17 is Top Gun Maverick. This is a movie that I expected nothing out of, because up to that point, I haven't seen the original Top Gun. I knew about Tom Cruise, but it wasn't really... He isn't really one of my personal favorite actors. I'm usually a guy that prefers someone like Keanu Reeves. That's just how I am. So, when they announced that Top Gun was getting a sequel, a legacy sequel all these years later, people at first really expected this thing to tank and just be a huge cash grab, but people have been pleasantly surprised by it. And only about a week ago, while I was still in Florida, I decided to do a huge marathon of movies for this year to catch up, which is why a bunch of these movies are on the list anyway. And this was one of them. First, my thoughts on the first Top Gun. It is a very good movie, but man, is it cheesy. It is so cheesy, it is so corny, and it is so, like, painfully, like, 80s that it's that it's kind of funny. But the emotional moments do work, and it has a great finale. So walking into Top Gun Maverick, I went in with my expectations kind of in the middle. But after watching it, I can see why a lot of people put it on their best list. Top Gun Maverick is a great sequel that is far superior to the original in every single way. Not only does it work well as a legacy sequel to this cult classic film, but it also works on its own as just an awesome military jet movie, like an airplane movie, because it is tense. It has moments that are going to leave you breathless and on the edge of your seat. The acting here is fantastic. For the most part, I'll get to that in a minute. The flying scenes, even better than they were in the original. And in the original, they were already really good. But this one, you have the real actors flying real jets through all these locales and stuff. It is so, so impressive. Not to mention, like, they tie up all those loose ends left from the first Top Gun. And they just do an amazing, amazing job bringing this movie to modern day without it feeling cringy. But there is one little aspect about the movie that definitely does hamper it a bit, and that is that in the second act, it does have a little bit of a pacing problem, and I'm sorry, I never bought Miles Teller in this movie at all. He just felt miscasted. I feel like he could have done better in a different film. Here, I just feel like he was miscasted, and that mustache. That mustache looks so dumb on him. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I'm, like, attacking someone's opinion or childhood here, but Miles Teller with a mustache looks stupid. But, yeah, I feel like they should have casted someone else to play Goose's son, but you know what? He works in this movie as is. I just never really bought him as this character. His acting's fine. He is talented. This just wasn't a movie for him. But Tom Cruise as Maverick, oh man, he was way better than I thought he was going to be. Because in the first one, he was really good, but he had this cheesy corniness about him that made me hesitant. And now in this movie, he's a bit more serious, he's a bit more, like, straight to the point. And some of the decisions he makes in the movie at first seem like a-hole moves, but then you kind of learn to understand where he's coming from. Because he's still dealing with that guilt of what happened to Goose, and now he's trying to protect his kid. So, you know what? It is what it is. It's a minor flaw. It's still a really, really great movie, and I can see why it's on many people's top 10 lists, but it's personally just not on mine. It's definitely a best list contender, though. Easy top 20. So yeah, that's number 17, Top Gun Maverick. Number 16 goes to a Netflix movie, and this one has a lot of bias behind it, because for those of you that don't already know, I am a Philadelphia Eagles sports fan fanatic, and I love Adam Sandler. What happens when you put the two together? You get an awesome little movie called Hustle. This is a film that I was really excited about from the minute I heard it. I mean, you have Adam Sandler, you have this true story that involves the Philadelphia 76ers and this guy who has this dream but also has to try and, raise up his family and keep them from going into poverty and stuff like that. And then Adam Sandler's performance as this scout for the 76ers is really good. It's far better than it has any right to be. It has a few little cheesy, corny moments, but it's mostly down serious and really downplayed. And these are the kind of Adam Sandler movies I really love. Don't get me wrong, I love movies like Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison. They still make me laugh. But I love Adam Sandler when he does more serious roles like this. Stuff like Hidden Gems, for example. Well, not Hidden Gems. Uncut Gems, sorry. Uncut Gems, for example. Like that was a movie that should have gotten some Oscar nominations. And this one's really good, too. I don't think it's Oscar good, which is why it's not higher on this list, but it's still really good. But unfortunately, just no one's talking about it. It got really good reviews, and it did really well on the top 10 Netflix chart, but I don't know, it just seems like it's getting underplayed. And again, a lot of bias here because I'm a Philadelphia sports fan, but I still think this movie's really good. And shout out to the guy who plays the basketball player in the movie. I forget his name. Editing, help me out here. Yeah, thank you, that guy. He puts in a great performance. So yeah, this is a really good movie, really good basketball movie, and if you are a Philadelphia sports fan at all, you are pretty much required to watch it. Really, really good film. Great job, Netflix. Number 15 goes to the most surprising success story of 2022, and that's Terrifier 2. This is a film that I wasn't sure what to expect. Wasn't the biggest fan of the first Terrifier. I love Art the Clown. He's an instantly iconic horror villain, but the movie that was surrounding him just felt very underweight, under par, and very, very indie. But by far the best thing about that first movie was the kills, the graphic effects, the practicality of it all. Like, that is all practical effects. There's little to no CGI, and it's done in such a way that even a gorehound like me almost puked. Like, it is gruesome. So with this sequel, there was obviously a lot of hype behind it because the first one built up a huge fan base. And yeah, you have those toxic douchebags that will attack people for thinking differently. But I still went into this with pretty good expectations. I saw the trailer, it looked pretty good. I'm glad it looked like they were taking more effort in the story this time around instead of just the practical effects and gore. It's still here, no doubt, and even more gruesome than it was in the first movie, but it still felt like things were going in the right direction. So then the movie comes out, and it gets a lot of praise from a lot of big horror critics, especially Cody Leach, who, just like me, wasn't really into the first Terrifier. But this is a movie he bought 3 times on physical just to show support to it. And it's a movie that even has been submitted for an Oscar nomination for special effects. And you know what? It deserves it. The special effects in this movie, the gore, the kills, the violence, is top-tier horror. Like, it is top-tier practical effects, and really goes to show that you can do kills and gore like this without having to rely on CGI. And if that wasn't good enough, you also have a really solid story here, with this really good main protagonist that's already becoming a fan favorite female lead in a horror film, played by the excellent Lauren Lavera. She did such an amazing job in this movie with a role that could have pretty much been your generic typical final girl, but here she really excels it into legendary status. And speaking of accelerating to legendary status, Art the Clown himself, played by David Howard Thornton, is even better than he was in the first Terrifier here. He is creepy, he is unrelenting, but he is also hilarious and very unsettling in the best kind of ways. Not to mention you have great cinematography, you have really good gore and special effects that are even more gruesome than they were in the first film. So, yeah, if you can't handle gore, bring a barf bag, or just don't watch this movie at all. But it also has really good acting from everybody. Even Felicia Rose is in this movie. And even though she's in a very small side role, she's still really good in the small, brief time that we see her in. So yeah, it was a big success story. It's become a huge, huge hit at the box office. A very big dark horse. And it has been getting praised from the horror critics for very good reason. Obviously, from, like, non-horror critics, they're gonna say, oh, this is still just the same gore-soaked horror trash as usual. But me, as well as a bunch of other people that are into horror movies, especially me, who is a gorehound and loves this kind of stuff, oh, this movie was so good. Just so good. Just so good, Terrifier 2. And I really hope you do get that Oscar nomination. You absolutely deserve it. So yeah, number 15, Terrifier 2. Speaking of movies that no one's going to talk about, let's go to number 14. This is a movie that I know no one's going to talk about, but I still want to put it on the list anyway because it's a movie that specifically hits me here. And that is Emancipation. It is a tragedy about what happened at the Oscars last year. You know, the slap heard around the world that banned Will Smith from the Oscars for 5-6 years, something like that. And that's a shame. because his performance in this movie specifically as the uh, as the guy behind that photo of that escaped slave, and how his picture is one of the things that sparked the uh, you know the it's hard to explain, but you know what I mean, that iconic picture from American history from the Civil War. His performance in this movie is definitely Oscar worthy. It is so good as this character, as this guy who gets ripped away from his family in the beginning and then has to work on the train tracks as a slave, and then he decides to take a chance and just run for it. All he knows is follow the sound of Lincoln's cannons. And then he just runs off into the swamp in a pretty much a glorified cat and mouse game with this hunter. And trust me, this hunter is not to be messed with. And then Will Smith's performance in this movie is fantastic, definitely Oscar worthy. And then all the other performances in here are great too. Like I forgot the guy who plays the hunter. Editing, help me. Thank you. That guy. Yes, that guy does a great performance as the hunter. Very chilling, very scary, and he will definitely leave you unsettled. And the kills in this movie, well, it's definitely a bit more on the restrained side of R ratings. It's still an R rating. There's still some really effective and bone-chilling kills that happen in this movie that are really going to turn your stomach and make you wince. It is that gruesome. And not only that, as an American history fanatic, me personally, I love American history. It was my favorite subject back in high school. This did a great job adding extra layers to this Civil War that I thought I knew everything about from school, but this added extra layers to it. And it made it even more fascinating. But yeah, a lot of bias plays into this one because I'm an American history fanatic, but I still really enjoyed this movie, and Apple Plus definitely has a hit on their hands. They did strike out with luck, but this is definitely one that you need to see. Not sure if it's worth an Apple Plus TV subscription all by itself, but still a very good movie, absolutely worth your time. Just throw the controversy away and just enjoy this movie. Okay, number 14, Emancipation. Number 13. It's time for another film that I wasn't really sure what to think of until I saw it. But when I saw it, it really did. It hit here. Like, it hits you in the heartstrings, and it's definitely a movie that deserves to be among the best of the year. And that is Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans. Now, something I forgot to point out in my Facebook post review of this movie is that this is a sort of biopic of Steven Spielberg's life, of how he became a filmmaker, what made him interested in film, and how it ties into his life and all the struggles he had to go through. But it's done in a fictionalized way, by having this Fableman family, where you have the main kid, who is a great actor, by the way. Great job in here, by the way. This kid, I forget his name. And he gets this camera. And his filmmaking starts with just a train. With a train set that he loves to see crash. And at first it angers his dad, but then his mom's like, well, we'll get Dad's camera. And we'll crash it once. And we'll film it so you can watch it over and over again. And this is pretty much a movie about the love of a filmmaker and how he evolves as he gets older and learns more techniques and gets more technology and software and stuff like that. But it's still very old school. And a lot of the performances in this movie are really good. Michelle Williams especially, which I just talked about in my Golden Globes prediction video that I literally just posted not even an hour ago. She deserved that Oscar nomination. Not Oscar, sorry, Golden Globe. She deserves that Golden Globe. She deserves that award, and she definitely deserves an Oscar. Her performance as the mother in this movie is so good. Heck, even Seth Rogen is good. In a movie, well, in a role that's very underplayed, but like the second half of the second act up into the third act, it becomes very important and meaningful. And the Fablemans themselves are just a great family that are really, really fascinating to watch. And it's also really tragic how it all slowly falls apart. And it's a movie that is going to touch you in the heart, especially if you are an aspiring filmmaker, which if you are required to watch this, because this is a movie about the passion of filmmaking. And if you love that kind of stuff, you're going to love this movie. And great screenplay, great dialogue, some pretty funny moments, very heartfelt. It's just an awesome film, guys, seriously. I can't say anything more without spoilers, but the one thing I will say that does hold this movie back from being better than it could be is that the ending is very tacked on and pointless. It feels very tacked on and pointless. Like, it has this big build up to this big moment, and then it just cuts it off. Like, that part is really the only reason I didn't give this movie a 10. It's still a 9.5. It's a great movie. So yeah, Fablemans definitely deserves the list. Number 12 is time for me to probably lose all respect I have as a critic, because this is a movie that I'm sure everyone's going to look at like, what? You put this movie this high over the Fablemans? Over Top Gun Maverick? Like, what is wrong with you? Well, personal opinion, a lot of bias, and this movie coming to me at the exact perfect time it needed to. Number 12 is Blues Big City Adventure. This is a film that came at the perfect time because I was in a really bad place when this movie was starting to come around. Because we just lost Robbie Coltrane and then lost Kevin Conroy, and both of those guys played huge parts in my childhood, and they really did hit me right in the heart and made me feel horrible. Like, I really felt incredibly sad and wasn't really sure what to do. And then this movie came around, and I decided to watch it. And it was the comforting, uplifting movie that I needed. Yes, I know it is very simple. It is a movie that is directed at kids. But as someone who was in that dark place, and as someone who has been a fan of this franchise ever since he was a young kid, like, hold on a second. As someone who even still has this thing. Yeah, this was my baby blanket. Blue's Clues was my life as a kid. As a very young kid, I was obsessed with it. And seeing now that it's not only relevant again, but thriving, and now celebrating 26 years, it hits me right in the feels. And when I finally watched this movie, it was not only a fantastic movie and by far the most enjoyable young kids film I've seen in a very long time, but it was also a great musical, a great film for the Blues Clues franchise, and it really just accelerates on everything that it needed to. Not to mention the hell this movie had to go through to get made. Because just like a certain other movie that I talked about in the most surprising list, I'm going to talk about here much higher up on this list. This is another movie that got thrown into the whole COVID delay debacle. Like, it got thrown into that horrible situation, and it looked like the movie was either going to get canned or postponed to years and years afterwards. Because this was a movie that was originally meant to come out like late 2020, early 2021. But because of COVID, everything got pushed back, and it took until this year to finally get it, after a 2-year hiatus. And not only that, the movie's actual filmmaking, like the behind-the-scenes stuff, was very secretive for a very good long while, leaving us Blues Clues fans to believe that, well, they're either keeping it a secret to not spoil anything, or they're trying not to hide the fact that it may or may not have been canned. But thankfully, came that trailer that I reacted to here on this channel, and it really did put a smile on my face. Especially seeing Steve again. Yes, I'm a 2000s kid, so I grew up more with Joe than I did with Steve, but Steve was still there in some capacity. and he was the first host of this show. So even as someone who grew up more with Joe as the host over Steve, Steve still holds a place in a lot of our hearts. And it is still a really good kids show. Like, even the new one is really good, but I'm getting off topic. Why is this movie so good? Why is it this high up, aside from being a comfort movie that helped me out in my deepest and darkest moment at that time? Because it was really uplifting, infectiously positive, very well written, and very just surprisingly hilarious. Like, there are so many great moments in this movie that make me laugh. Like, the joke, this isn't a spoiler, it was in the On Our Way music video they released before the movie came out. When Josh goes to New York City with Blue, and he's talking with these inanimate objects because, everything in Skidoo World, as they call it, is, a living thing. But here, it's not, and when he's talking to something like a dormant mailbox, it just makes you laugh. And not only that, his infectious positivity, his determination to achieve his dream, it is something that I can very much relate to. Being not only a content creator, but someone that's trying to become a singer a lot like Josh. And then Stephen Joe's part in this movie is perfect. They don't take over the screen. They're not trying to take over pretty much the whole movie. They are there simply to help. And that's the best part. Not only that, we really get to see more about Steve after what happened when he went to college and left the show. And it's really interesting. Not to mention, there's a lot of really good cinematography here. Very masterful directing from a dude that I believe used to direct music videos, if I'm not mistaken. Apologies if I get that wrong. And speaking of music, this is probably one of the most enjoyable movie soundtracks I've heard in a very long time. Because the soundtrack and the songs in this movie are so good. Like, all of them. On Our Way, Happiness is Magic, That's My Song, The Planet Song. They all just really work here. And not to mention, they are really hummable, they are incredibly catchy, and they are overly cheesy and bombastic in the best ways imaginable. And the ending is really good. And not to mention, you even get a nice little cameo from Alex Winter. Yeah, Ted from Bill and Ted. Well, Bill from Bill and Ted, sorry. Sorry if I'm getting that backwards. The Bill and Ted guy. And his role in this movie, while very brief, is still really cool. I mean, I could go on about this movie for hours, but I already did a full, half-hour long review of it, so I'm going to stop it right here. But yeah, this movie came at me at the perfect time, and it really helped me out of a deep, dark place, and thus it holds a special place in my heart, not to mention being a huge Blue's Clues fan since he was a literal baby. That's why it's so high on this list. I know it's going to be controversial, and I know a lot of people are going to have problems with it, but it's my personal opinion, and this movie just perfectly hit me when it needed to. So yeah, that's why it's number 12 on the list. And finally, number 11, before we get to the actual top 10 list, number 11 is The Outfit. This is one of the last movies I saw for 2022, and it's a really good one. It is a crime mob drama, but it's more dialogue-driven than actual, action, gun shooting, yada yada yada. You get some of that, but it's more about dialogue and character. And the performances in this movie are very good. Especially from the main tailor, or Kata, as he is frequently referred to in the movie. Not to mention, there was so many twists and turns at you, and the ending especially is going to have your jaw on the floor. It is like Knives Out level good. It is a really good ending that's going to be absolutely unpredictable, and it's going to make you really question the movie you just watched. It's a movie that gets better with pretty much every rewatch, and if I was going to rewatch it now for a third or fourth time, it would probably be higher on the list, but I only had enough time before making these year-end lists to watch it 2 times, and both times it was an epic that had me glued to the screen. It's really dang good. I know I might be selling it short here, but trust me, it's really good. There's a reason it is on top 10 best lists, like Chris Stuckman's, for example. And I'm glad Chris is the one that actually introduced me to this movie, because I saw his best list, I saw it was on there, and I was quite curious. Like, you have just a really unique concept, very well executed, with great actors, and it's more dialogue driven. But despite being dialogue driven and not action heavy, like you would expect crime mob boss movies to be, it still works to a surprisingly great degree. There are moments that are funny, there are moments that are tense, there are moments that are really just surprising and unpredictable. And again, that third act double plot twist is going to leave your jaw on the floor. So yeah, it was the hardest cut I had to make from the top 10 best list, but trust me when I say, it's a great film, and it's absolutely worth your time. So yep, that is number 11, The Outfit. Okay, now for the top 10. I've already prattled on enough, but we're not done yet. So let's go to the top 10 list. Some of these are going to be brief because some of them I've already talked about in the most surprising list, but some of them I'm going to be a bit more in depth about. So let's go ahead and get this list started, shall we? So, kicking us off at number 10 is Battle of the Super Sons. Yeah, I know, it made the top 10 list over The Outfit. I know, that's going to be very controversial, but it's just how I am. I'm a guy that's always been more leaning towards animation over live action. It's just the way I am. And it's the way I've been since I was a kid. I've always just been more fascinated with things like cartoons and anime and animated films over the Oscar bait live action stuff. Not saying that stuff isn't good, there's a decent bit on this list, but I've always been someone that prefers animation. So that's why this movie's here and The Outfit's at number 11. But this is a really good movie. I already pretty much explained at length in the most surprising list why it's such a good movie, even though it has, again, T-posing Superman. I'm sorry, I'm never going to live that down. That is so funny to me that even got past the development stage. But it's still a really good movie. I already explained why at length, so the reason why it's this high up on the list should be quite obvious. Great animation, great voice acting, a great story, excellent action scenes, superb 3D animation in most spots, and it's just a thrill ride from beginning to end. It's got some dark moments, but it's very, very lighthearted, and I think it's a really good movie. Not only for Batman and Superman fans, but just for kids in general. It's a really good movie. But yeah, kids over 13 though, because there is some blood. There is some blood and some minor cursing, but it's not like, it's not like R rating bad, where there's an F-bomb every 5 minutes. There's not even an F-bomb in this movie. There's more stuff like hell and damn and stuff like that. So yeah, I already explained this one at length, but it's at number 10, and I just wanted to explain why. So let's go ahead and move on. Number 9 is a movie that was also on the most surprising list I did go a bit in depth about, but I want to go a bit more in depth about it, and that is The Menu. One of the best horror films of the year, by a landslide. Ralph Fiennes deserves an Oscar for his performance here as the head chef, but one thing I forgot to point out when I was talking about it in the most surprising list is that it's not only dialogue driven, like the dialogue isn't the only thing that's funny. There's also a lot of really hilarious visual gags that are going to crack you up. Like, there's one scene, minor spoilers. There's a scene in this movie where Tyler, the dude that is with Dakota Johnson's character, and the chef decides to allow Tyler into his pantheon, and he makes a meal. And the meal is literally called Tyler's Bullshit. That one cracked me up so much I literally had to pause the movie because I was laughing so hard. Oh, it's so good. Not to mention Dakota Johnson's performance is great here. I already talked about John Leguizamo and how his role seems very underplayed at first, but it becomes very vital by the second half of the movie. The kills, while very restrained, are super effective, and that final act is crazy in the best amount of ways, and it's so unpredictable. And yes, I should explain something that I'm not really a big foodie, so I wasn't really into most of these dishes because I'm not really that kind of guy, but it still looked really good, and they did an amazing job on the cinematography and putting the focus on the different kind of food and the symbolism behind it all. I just thought I'd point that out, but yeah, number 9 is The Menu. It is definitely a movie that is without a doubt among the 10 best of the year. Number 8 goes to another movie that I did talk about a little bit on the most surprising list, but I did say I would save my big explanation for it for this video, and that is Puss in Boots 2: The Last Wish, one of the best animated films of the year. What makes this movie so good is not only, like I said in the other video, that it brings back that adult, mature edge that the first two Shrek movies had that made them so good for both adults and kids, but it is also a movie that really just hits you right in the heart about these heavy topics like death and legacy and trying to figure out what to do after retirement, or figuring out how you want to spend the rest of your life before you go to your eternal resting place. Like, it is a movie that really deals with deep, dark topics, but it's still able to do it in such a cheesy, goofy way that it's still passable enough for kids. But it has that deep layer that makes it so good for adults like me. And like I said in the other video, I loved the first Puss in Boots. I feel like I was one of the only people that did. But I really love this sequel, and it was so good. Another thing I forgot to mention is the soundtrack's really good in this movie too. Fearless Hero in particular, I want to shout you out. You're a great, great song. I'm going to talk more about you in next year's Best Pop Songs list, because I already have a certain other song on that list, and having two from the same company would be a bit redundant. So I'll save you for the 2023 Pop Songs list. Stay tuned for that on my other channel. But also, Antonio Banderas' performance here as Puss is great. Probably the best out of all the movies, because he has to really deal with these really serious moments. Like, he has to deal with fear, this terrifying wolf creature chasing him around that really actually gets him to fear something. And then you also have his relationship with Kitty Softpaws and how it slowly transitions and develops throughout the film. I already said Pepe was okay as a comedic foil. He's not actively annoying, but I feel like, again, I'm going to forget him in like 3-4 years' time. And again, Florence Pugh as Goldilocks is great. The bears are great, even though James Corden, I could have done without that. But another thing I really want to talk about here specifically is the ending. Because the way that this movie's titled, The Last Wish, you would expect, like, oh, Puss is going to sacrifice himself or something like that. Well, that's not what happens. Instead, he realizes who he truly is and who he wants to be, and the legacy that he doesn't want to... He wants to continue and not quite finish yet. And then, when it seems like he has all the pieces in place to get his wish and get his 9 lives back, instead he tears the map apart and pretty much sends the wishing star back into space to never be seen again, because he would rather do as much as he can with the last life he has, rather than just redo it all over again. That's a message that's going to hit really deep. And I especially love how in the end, again, minor spoiler, Kitty and Puss finally become a couple, and it's super cute. Like, it is so adorable. It is so cool. And another thing I forgot to mention in that most surprising list about this movie is the dialogue and the humor. It is so good. Like, there are so many moments that is laugh out loud funny, but it's smartly written. Let me explain. For example, you have that part from the trailer that makes fun of the puppy dog eyes gag that's been part of Puss's character since the second movie where he was introduced. And in this movie, you have him having this competition with Kitty Softpaws, trying to do the cuter puppy dog eyes, and then Kitty with her paws, and then you have Pepe the dog in the middle, and it gets so cute and he faints. I can't say anything more. You just gotta watch the rest of it. It is funny, it's gonna hit you in the heart, and it is a very good movie, and it deserved that Golden Globes nomination. And I'm hoping it wins Best Animated Movie of the Year, because it deserves it. Great, great, great film. Easily a top 10 contender. And the only reason it's not higher is stiff competition. Nothing more, nothing less. Number 7. It's time for a movie that you probably expected to be on this list, especially if you saw my review on Snow Was Saying 77 or my TikTok. And that is The Batman. This is a movie that I had so much hype going into it. Like, I was unsure about Robert Pattinson as Batman. I didn't expect it to be horrible, but I wasn't really sure what to expect. He is a great actor, but I don't know, it just seemed like a bit of a weird casting choice at the time. And then you have stuff like Zoe Saldana as Catwoman, and Colin Farrell, and Paul Dano. Paul Dano's The Riddler especially is one that I was hesitant on, because I was like, well, this guy's usually known for his dramatic or comedic roles. How can he do a scary horror villain? He proved me wrong. Everything about this movie proved me wrong. I didn't give it an 11 because I do think the third act was very unnecessary and a bit tacked on, but the rest of the movie, all 3 hours of it, I was sitting in that theater and I was engaged the whole time. I love the dark jokes. I love the way it set up Gotham. I love Batman's new suit, which is probably one of my new favorites since the Michael Keaton Batman suit. The Batmobile is sick. Colin Farrell's performance as Penguin in this movie, Oswald Cobblepot, is by far one of the best of the year. Not only because you can barely tell it's him, but because he literally transforms into that role. Not only with the makeup, but with the performance and the slightly Cockney kind of accent he gives the character. Not to mention there's some pretty funny moments he's in as well. And this movie, it didn't lie when it said it was going to be a straight-up horror film, because there are moments in this movie that are like a horror film. It has that build-up. It has that tense atmosphere. It has that super, just well-done suspense. And then, bam! Just hits you like a hammer. And the murders in this movie are so effective. Now, I do have a few complaints that I do agree with most critics. Batman does take a lot of more abuse than he should. Like, he's literally unhurt after being this close to an explosive. Like, that does seem a bit far-fetched, but I love this kind of Batman, and it gives us the movie that we've been waiting for a while. A movie that's more than just a superhero film, but it's a deep, dark, intense detective story. An aspect of Batman that has been very underplayed in the past few years. I mean, yes, you have some of that, like for example with Michael Keaton's Batman, when he does all this research to figure out who the Joker is and how it ties into his own past and all that. But we didn't get one that's a straight up murder mystery like this. And this is the Batman film that we really needed. Now, yes, I do think Robert Pattinson needs to work on his Bruce Wayne a bit, because he is a bit of the brooding loner stereotype, but that's really a minor complaint. I gave this movie a 10 for a reason, and while I don't think it's better than the 1989 Batman, out of pure bias, because that's one of my favorite movies of all time, but it's still, without a doubt, an incredible Batman film, an incredible superhero film, and one of the best DC films we've gotten in a very long time. Awesome film. I'm excited for the sequel, and if this is the foundation that James Gunn builds his new DCEU off of, oh, we are in for something special. So yeah, Batman, absolutely a top 10 contender. And the only reason it didn't make the top 5 is stiff competition. Nothing more, nothing less. Number 6, if you had told me that this movie would not only be among the best of the year, but also far better than its predecessor, and the top 5 in the entire MCU for me, I would have laughed in your face. But it happened. It happened this year with the only other movie that Disney didn't decide to throw down the toilet, and that is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This is a film that, at first, just like Top Gun Maverick, I thought it was getting very overhyped, very overrated. And there were a few people that were a bit more divided on it. But think about the way this movie came out and the horrible hand that Ryan Coogler was dealt with. He lost his star in the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman. He had to deal with so much production issue and some behind the scenes stuff with Marvel and Disney. Then he had to keep delaying the movie because of COVID. And it was just a movie that looked like it was destined to fail. But against all odds, Ryan Coogler pulled it off, and he ended up making a movie that is far superior to the first Black Panther. There is great things all throughout this movie. Namor, one of the best and most underrated Marvel villains we've gotten in a long time. Easily one of the best in the MCU. Shuri in this movie is going to hit you in the feels because she's dealing with so much, and she deals, with the death of her brother and trying to be the queen of Wakanda in her brother's place, or how at the beginning of the movie she fails to save him from an ill disease. Her performance in this movie is very emotional and very, very riveting. And then you also have Okoye, who is badass, just like in the first movie, but also surprisingly funny. And another character I wasn't expecting to like, Riri Williams, Ironheart, is actually really good in this movie too. Yes, the Ironheart suit itself is super cheesy. It's super cheesy, super fake, and nowhere near as good as the actual Iron Man armor, but you know what, it's fine. And as a character, she is really funny, and she is in a lot of really good moments throughout. Do I wish the suit design was better? Absolutely, but minor complaint. I also love this underwater city they made, which is not a ripoff of Atlantis, it's its own thing. And the backstory and the lore behind it, it is all just multiple layers on top of multiple layers that really makes this thing work. And Angela Bassett, in particular, she earned that Oscar nomination. She earned that Oscar nomination, she earned that Golden Globe nomination. And I'm hoping she wins both, because her performance in this movie is so transcendent. It is so good. She has to deal with so many different emotions, as well as diplomacy and all these big emotional moments. It is so good. It is so good, and it is going to give you goosebumps. And then the action's really good, as per usual. Way better than the first Black Panther, because there's no god-awful CGI this time. The final battle's a lot better. And I just really love the way that Wakanda all comes together to try and carry on that legacy that was left behind by T'Challa. And the post-credit scene, while it is important and definitely a bit out of left field, it does feel a bit underplayed. That's really my only complaint. I gave this movie a 10 for a very good reason. It is a phenomenal film, and it really is the best MCU movie we've gotten in a very long time. And again, if you had told me that this was among the top 5 of the MCU, and second best of the entire fourth phase of the MCU, only beat by Spider-Man No Way Home, of course, I would have laughed in your face, but they did it. They pulled it off, and Ryan Coogler deserves all the credit and talent and recognition in the world for being dealt such a horrible, tragic hand, and still turning in gold. Phenomenal film, and I'm really excited for what he does for a third Black Panther, whenever that comes around. Okay, now we're getting into the top 5, and these are movies that are very, very close to one another. It is so razor-thin close. And this one, I gotta give it a proper introduction. You guys ready? You thought I was gonna do a list like this and not put Dragon Ball Super Superhero in the top 5? Yeah, no, you are wrong on so many levels. Dragon Ball Super Superhero is a phenomenal film in pretty much every single way, shape, and form. Not only is it a phenomenal Dragon Ball film, not only is it an excellent follow-up to Broly, even though it's not as good, and not only is it a just all-around fantastic film from beginning to end, But it is a movie that did something that we haven't seen since the original Z. Putting the focus back on Gohan and Piccolo instead of Goku and Vegeta. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Goku. This guy is like my favorite character in all of fiction, second only to maybe Shadow the Hedgehog. But, like, I do get a little bit tired of just him all the time. I want to see more emphasis on the other characters, and here we really get that. We get Piccolo having to be this grandfather for Pan, and their dialogue and whole story throughout between the two are so good in this movie. Like, it is just so good. The way they brought back the Red Ribbon Army is downright genius and ties into the lore perfectly. I love the two new androids, Gamma 1 and Gamma 2. Instantly iconic new Dragon Ball characters. But this movie really belongs to Gohan. This is his movie, and this is the movie that really brings him back to that badass that we have not seen since the original Z. As in the Cell Saga. There are great fights in this movie, the animation's great, but Gohan is really the star here. The way he has to try and balance, spending time with Pan, trying to keep his job, keep his family, well-fed and maintained, while also having to deal with Piccolo hounding him about not training or putting way too much time into other things that, in his opinion, aren't as important. And then, when Pan gets kidnapped, Gohan goes into that mode. Like, he realizes, okay, I need to get better. And since my dad ain't here to help me, I need to go out there and save my daughter. And just Gohan's performance throughout this entire movie by Kyle Herbert, who has been great as Gohan ever since he first started playing the character, is really good in this movie. Like, this is Gohan's film. Like, undoubtedly. Even though a lot of people say it more belongs to Piccolo, and I understand that, but no. This is Gohan's film. This is Gohan's movie. And he is so good in this movie, and he carries it very well. And not only that, the Red Ribbon Army themselves in this movie are very effective and great villains. And one thing I need to point out that a lot of people just completely underplay is the fact that the main villain of the movie, Magenta, I believe his name is Magenta, something like that. He's voiced by Charles Martinet. Yeah, that's Mario's voice actor in a Dragon Ball film. And he's one of the best parts of the movie. I mean, how often do you see that? Like, it's so good. Not to mention the ending's great. The fights, the fights are so good. It is that perfect balance between, like, what you expect from modern-day superhero movies while also having that Dragon Ball edge to it. With the choreography and the blast effects and all these cool, crazy things that they do. It's so good. I especially want to shout out the fight in the rain between Gamma 1 and Gohan. Oh man, that scene is so beautiful. And I know a lot of people, again, minor spoilers here, I know a lot of people love to underplay Cell Max and say that he doesn't need to be in here, but no, it works well because this movie is pretty much a feature film version and a much later version of the Cell Saga, because you have Gohan as the focus. You have him trying to balance a bunch of things. You have him trying to get stronger. And then when it matters most, he needs to come in and help save the world with the help of his mentor Piccolo. And then, of course, it ends just like in the Cell Saga with Gohan destroying Cell. But this time, again, little minor spoiler here. Instead of using a Kamehameha like you would expect from a movie like this, instead he goes for the freaking special beam cannon. And let's talk about Beast Gohan for a minute. Probably one of the most badass, awesome designs in all of anime. I don't even care if that's controversial to say. Yes, Orange Piccolo is cool and all, but Beast Gohan. Oh, he's so cool. The red eyes, the white hair. Oh, it's so good. I'm so excited to get the Stitch figures of this figure next year. Well, this year, you know what I mean. And it's just a really cool design. It looks so good. And is it just me, or does it feel like it's a bit of an ode to Hypersonic? Because if you really think about it, you did have that Easter egg in Broly, where Goku's eyes turned red before his hair did. Kind of as an homage to Supersonic. So my question is here, was this design inspired by Hypersonic, which is the same thing? basically. It's supersonic, but it's all silver or white fur with bright red eyes. Like, is that just me? I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. But yeah, I've gone on about this movie long enough. It's such a good movie. Like, I love Dragon Ball Super Superhero, and I haven't even gotten to the scenes on Beerus's planet with Goku, Vegeta, Chilai, Lemo, Broly, Whis, and Beerus. Not only is it funny and that perfect Akira Toriyama dialogue, but it's also really good, and it gives us something that we've been wanting to see for a while, even though it is a bit underplayed. And that is a base form, no Super Saiyan, no holds barred fight with Goku and Vegeta. And it is such a thrill ride to see. Yes, like I said, it is underplayed, but it works really well here. And the post-credit scene, another little spoiler here, where Vegeta finally beats Goku, that is so satisfying. Like, don't get me wrong, again, Goku's my favorite character, but there's no doubt that Vegeta is the best character. At least in my eyes. I could be wrong on that, I don't know. But yeah, Vegeta is the best character, but Goku is my favorite. That's the way I see it. And seeing him finally beat Goku without having to do like a cheap shot back to the back of the neck smack like he did in the Boo Saga, and he doesn't have to, rely on any cheap tactics or anything like that. It's just a no-holds-barred fight, and it works so well here, and it's so good. And I do need to mention another thing about this movie, and that is Johnny Young Bosch replacing Vic Mignogna as Broly because of, the whole stupid controversy. Thanks Monica Rial. But yeah, Johnny Young Bosch, also known as Adam, the Black Mighty Morphin Power Ranger, and Yusuke from Yu Yu Hakusho, and among many other things, he is a very talented anime voice actor. He does do a really good job as Broly here. He did a great job playing Broly in the video games, but he's doing a great job here as Broly as well, even though he doesn't really get to do much. But the one thing that definitely made me laugh about the Beerus planet scenes is Beerus's interactions with Chilai. Like, that made me laugh so hard. And the expressions on everyone's faces, especially Whis and Vegeta, it is just so funny. But yeah, it's funny, it's action-packed, it's badass, it's awesome, it's heartfelt. It's an awesome movie. And not to mention, it finally gets rid of Kid Goten and Kid Trunks, two of the worst characters in this whole show. And then we finally get Eric Vale voicing Trunks properly, and Team Goten is far better than he was in GT. So, yeah, just improvements all the way around. And like I said, while I still think Broly is a better movie, this is a great sequel. And not to mention, it did a great job handling this big time jump. I think it was 5 years since Broly, something like that? And they still did an amazing job with it. I know I'm going on and on and on about Dragon Ball, but it's a franchise I love, and Superhero delivered in every single way that it needed to. Even better 3D animation than Battle of the Super Sons, superb voice acting, excellent action, a great story that puts the focus on the minor characters over the major characters. I could go on about this movie for hours, but you know what? I'm just going to leave it right there. Awesome film, definitely worthy of the top 10 list, and easily top 5. And the fact that it made number 5, despite all the competition, is truly a championship-worthy, appraisal. It's biased. It's not going to be on anyone else's top 10 list, but it's on mine because it's a phenomenal film. I love Dragon Ball Super Superhero, and I am excited to finally get the DVD when it comes out in February. So, yep. I think that's all I can really say about Dragon Ball Super Superhero. It's a phenomenal film, and if you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out. What are you doing? Go watch it right now. Okay. Okay. I meant to grab the tank top, but I guess my Saiyan powers was like, nope, you're wearing the jersey now. Sure, whatever. Okay, let's move on. I already spent, so much time on Superhero. I'm sorry, I'm such a Dragon Ball nerd. Alright, moving on to number 4. This is a movie that I already went at length about in the most surprising list, so this is going to be a nice, short, and brief little thing. and that is Mortal Kombat Legends Snowblind. This is a film that, again, I expected nothing out of, especially after the god-awful Battle of the Realms, but it turned out to be an incredible movie, by far the best of the MK movies, and probably one of my all-time favorite WB animation movies. Yup, right up there with Batman Under the Red Hood. It is such a phenomenal film that did everything right. It fixed all the horrible F-ups that it did with Battle of the Realms, and excels even further than Scorpion's Revenge. Great story, great gore, great action, great suspense, great voice acting, great characters. It's just an all-around phenomenal film. I already went on about it at length in the most surprising list, so if you want to see my real in-depth thoughts about it, just go watch that video. But it deserves the list, and it easily earns a spot in the top 5. Number 3, we're getting to the top 3 now. And number 3 is The Retaliators. This is my pick for best horror film of the year, without a single doubt in my mind. Amazing performance by Michael Lombardi. Great kills, a great story, great revenge tale. Cinematography, directing, amazing soundtrack. I could go on because it's a movie that really just works on every single level. And again, just like I said in the most surprising list, after the hell this movie had to go through with COVID and production issues and the soundtrack and a bunch of other things, it's a miracle it even got made at all. And I'm glad that it did, because it is a phenomenal film that absolutely deserves your time and money, especially if you're a horror fanatic. And like I said in that video, first movie since Nightmare Before Christmas you can actually watch on Halloween and Christmas and not feel guilty about either one. So, yep. That's all I gotta say about Retaliators. You want more about it? Go watch my most surprising list. Okay, top 2. Number 2. This is something that shouldn't surprise a single one of you that this is this high. I have done nothing all year long but praise this movie. And it's a movie that absolutely deserves all the praise, and is my pick for Best Animated Movie of the Year. Number 2 is The Bad Guys. This is a film that I was excited about from the moment I heard the concept. You know, you have these 5 villains that pull off heists and do all this crazy stuff. And then you also have this concept about them learning how to be good guys and how it's all part of a big plot. And it just sounds so cool. And not to mention the animation just from the mere concept art looked so sick. Like, really Spider-Verse, really 3D, super stylized, and looked so good. And I was super excited for this movie, and of course, like I said, I literally watched every DreamWorks movie that came out at that point. A couple of first-time watches as well, like Puss in Boots, that really surprised me, and a couple that were just absolute turds. And especially since DreamWorks lately, up to this point, had been kind of under par with movies like Trolls and Boss Baby and a bunch of other stupid crap. I didn't know what to expect from DreamWorks. And then finally, out of nowhere, this movie comes out to high praise from animation critics, as well as just any critics in general. Like, people were glowing about this movie. And I saw it day one, and I can totally see why. It is a phenomenal film in every single way, shape, and form. From its beautiful 3D animation, yes, even better than Dragon Ball Super Superhero. The excellent voice acting from the likes of, let me try to remember all their names. Sam Rockwell, Aquafina, sorry, I'm doing horrible with this. There it is. Okay, no, never mind. But yeah, Sam Rockwell as Mr. Wolf, Mr. Snake, Anthony Ramos as Mr. Piranha, Aquafina, especially as Legs or Tarantula, is so good in this movie and so funny that it just really works. And I could go on and on about this movie, but I really did like a big, long review of this one, so you guys should all know why it's this high, and you should all understand why I love it so much. I mean, it's literally the only 2022 movie so far that I actually have the DVD of. That should go to show you how much I love this movie. It is a phenomenal film. It truly brought DreamWorks back to that golden age renaissance they had in the 2000s. and it is just an all-around phenomenal film. If you haven't watched The Bad Guys yet, you need to. It is a perfect masterpiece of a movie. Yes, you have a twist villain that's very predictable. Yes, there are a few moments that can feel done before, but it's still so good. Like, it even does low-hanging fruit jokes, and it still somehow works. I haven't read the books yet, but I'm willing to bet it's just as good as this movie. And I am so pumped for Bad Guys 2 whenever it comes out in the next few years. So yeah, The Bad Guys, easily the best animated movie of the year. Easily one of, easily possibly my favorite DreamWorks movie of all time. Yes, even over Shrek. And just a movie that really is just awesome. Seriously, watch The Bad Guys if you haven't already. It is an absolute must-see. No matter who you are. Just awesome, awesome film. Easily deserves the number 2 spot. And finally, number 1. There were a lot of great movies this year, but there was only one that is so transcendent and so amazing and so spectacular and so legendary that it's possibly now my favorite film of all time. It is a movie that I was extremely excited for, looked amazing from the trailers and the concept art and every other thing about it. And I literally did a whole month just to ramp up and live up the hype for this movie. And if you know me very well enough, you should already know what it is. So, without any more further transparency, and something I've been waiting to do since April of 2022, now I can finally do it. Number 1. My number 1 best movie of 2022 is... Sonic the Hedgehog 2! I mean, come on. Can I be any more predictable? I know it's predictable, especially if you know me very well. I am a massive Sonic fan. I have been a fan of this guy since 2004. Growing up on Sonic X. Playing Sonic 3 is my first video game of all time. Playing Sonic Unleashed and just following this blue blur all throughout his adventures throughout the years. And not to mention, I loved the first movie. I literally have it. Actually, hold on. It is literally the only film that I have on a 4K steelbook. That's how much I love this movie. I wanted to give it the golden attention that it deserves in the collection. Like, not the Blu-ray. No. I wanted the steelbook. Not only because of the comic, but because, I mean, just look at this. Look at this. It is so freaking cool. So yeah, I wanted to give this movie the golden treatment, and I was super excited when they announced the sequel. From, again, all the trailers looking so good, the reveal of the Death Egg robot, and Knuckles being voiced by Idris Elba, and Colleen O'Shaughnessy getting to voice Tails in a major motion picture. That is a huge deal, not only for the Sonic franchise, as she has personally been my all-time favorite voice of Tails, but she is also a voice actor, usually known for the small screen stuff. Now she gets to be in a big motion picture, which is huge for her career. Like, how often do you ever see that? I mean, yes, you have Eric Bauza, but, I mean, for Colleen O'Shaughnessy, that is a huge deal, and she did such a phenomenal job in this movie as Tails. And then, like, I literally did a full month of getting all the merchandise that was coming out for this movie. Like, all the merch, talking about all the details, and I literally did a whole documentary about the production of this film. That had to get cut down a bit because apparently this filmmaker does not allow me to do videos that are over 2 hours, so... Yeah, like, I was so hyped for this movie. I went into it with sky-high expectations. Everything looked so good, and it was going to have so many different surprises in store. And yes, I was one of those people that unfortunately got spoiled that Supersonic was in the movie. Thanks a lot, McDonald's. But I was still hyped. I bought a ton of merch. I reviewed a bunch of Sonic stuff. I literally just went so in-depth and balls to the wall crazy with the hype I had for this movie that I just had to share it with you guys. And man, not only did it live up to that hype, But like I said in the most surprising list, it exceeded it in ways that I couldn't even possibly fathom. It is a fantastic, phenomenal, perfect masterpiece of a film. And it is easily the best video game adaptation we've gotten ever. Like, ever. Especially in comparison to something like Uncharted, which is just okay at best. But, my goodness, this movie, the experience I had with it was just so good. Walking into it, having a Sonic Movie 2 shirt, going in full balls to the wall crazy with all the merch, sitting down in that theater, and finally seeing it. Oh, I was not prepared for the amazing moments of this movie. It takes everything that made the first Sonic movie such a masterpiece and worked so well, took out the little things that kept it from being amazing, and accelerated it to heights that I couldn't even begin to describe to you. It is a movie that I've rewatched more times than anything I've ever watched in my whole life. Yes, even over things like Zombie Island, for example. Even more than Dragon Ball Super Broly. Let that sink in. And I know this is only me that's going to be putting this as the film of the year, but it deserves it. It absolutely does deserve it. Sonic 2 is a phenomenal film in every single way, shape, and form. It is action-packed. It is funny. It has amazing moments. Fantastic acting and voice acting. Just stellar. Out of this world of special effects and CGI. A great story. A ton of really amazing Easter eggs. Oh, I could go on for so long about everything that this movie did right. And then, to top it all off, you bring in Super Sonic, and for the post-credit scene, you tease my boy Shadow. Like, you do that, and you immediately just automatically buy my ticket for Sonic 3. Not that you didn't already do so, because the whole movie's just phenomenal all across the board. Even the wedding scenes that people are saying drags the movie to a halt, or makes it completely stop in place before going again. Like, come on, guys. It's not that bad. Like, the wedding scenes in this movie are well handled and super funny. Not to mention they work well in the overall story, even though it's own side plot. And it's giving you what you wanted. You wanted to see the CGI characters and the Sonic characters in the forefront of the story. And you've got that, and yet you still complain. I will never understand you people. Not to mention those Wayne scenes were funny, and I love the action that goes on there, and all the cool little twists, and not to mention Gun's finally in the Sonic Cinematic Universe. That's awesome in its own right. But the real standout we need to talk about here, well, two standouts actually, is Idris Elba's Knuckles, who is hilarious as well as badass, and Jim Carrey's Dr. Robotnik, who is even better than he was in the first movie, because he just gets to go balls to the wall, all out, nuts. And it works so well here. I will never understand anyone that will ever complain about this movie and still say it's not good enough, or it doesn't reach the heights of the first, or it's a terrible sequel, or it did things wrong, yada yada yada. Guys, it literally does everything right here. I know that's a controversial thing, and I know putting it over stuff like Top Gun Maverick is definitely going to get me in my comment section a bunch of hatred, but this is my opinion. I love Sonic. You guys need to understand that. I love Sonic. He has been there for me pretty much my whole life. And while the first movie, this one right here, is a phenomenal film that I still watch a lot to this very day and cherish with every single fiber of my heart and soul, the second one just did so many other things right, and it really just brought me by far the best experience I've had in 2022. It was a movie that I knew would be number one, and I still wasn't prepared for what it threw at me. It is a phenomenal film. I don't give a single damn if I'm the only critic that does it, but I'm saying it right here, right now. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is without a single doubt the best movie of 2022. And the only reason I don't have it on physical media yet is because of money troubles. If it weren't for my fact of having financial problems with a bunch of other things, I would already have the Steelbook, and I would be holding it up for you guys to see. But yeah, I think Jack's Sonic here will do in its place. Sonic 2, the best movie of 2022 by a million zillion miles. Okay, that's it. That is the big one. That is going to end this incredibly long video about the top 20 best movies of 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please feel free to leave your own top 20 best list down in the comments, or 10 or 25, however many you want to talk about. And feel free to leave me comments about why I'm wrong about Sonic 2 being the best movie of the year. But please be respectful about it, okay? I will respect your opinion if you will respect mine. Plain and simple. But, yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Please don't forget to drop a like, share this video over social media, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that algorithmic garbage to help this channel grow. And stay tuned, because we still have 2 more year-end lists to do for this channel and the other channel before the rest of them just go straight to the other channel. And those are the top 10 best and worst video games of 2022, because, trust me, there was some really good ones this year, and a lot of them are animation-related, so I feel justified putting them here on this list. So, well, on this channel. So, yep, thank you guys for watching. I'm Jack Small of Emancipation. This is me and my boy, Sonic Wachowski, signing out. Peace.